Assalamu alaikum and good greetings. So today we'll be watching a video titled "You Are Not My Son Anymore," the story of a Japanese Imam. So this is by what channel this is? Towards Eternity. And without further ado, let's watch.
What was the thing that couldn't make sense to you in Buddhism? How was your family's and friends' reaction if you are becoming Muslim? What is the worst hardship that you go through in Japan about practicing your religion?
Then he started asking me why you are still Muslim. Quit being a Muslim. I told him, no, I can't. Then finally he goes, okay, then you are not my son anymore.
Who is Ahmed Maino?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Ahmed Maino. My given name still is Naoki. I'm from Japan, originally from Aichi, which is the middle of Japan, and currently living in Chiba next to Tokyo and working in Tokyo. And I'm one of the 4 imams of Japan Muslim Association. My nafs ego, myself, woke up at the age of around 13 to 14 and then started asking myself, where did I come from? Where am I going to? And what am I living for? And since I was brought up in Japan, I was born and brought up in Japan, the atmosphere or the closest religion I found was the Buddhism. So I thought if I took that path of the Buddhism, especially the original path of the Buddhism, I thought I could lead to the answers for my quest. I once gave up finding truth through religions, but then I had the chance of going to Australia, Melbourne, as an exchange student for about a year. Then during my stay there, alhamdulillah, I met one Egyptian family. They treated me very nicely. So knowing them through dealing with them, my biased viewpoint against Islam slowly melted away.
So what was the point that you became really convinced about Islam?
After coming to the conviction with Islam that this is the one I was always looking for, I still had fear and anxiety towards my future because I was one of them, one of those who look at Islam with biased viewpoint against. So I knew if I took the final step, coming across the red line of becoming and entering into the world of Islam and Muslims, how would I be looked at in Japanese society, in my own society? I would be looked at very strange, weird person. That was the reason which made me of coming across the final line. But then watching the film of Malcolm X gave me the last push, encouraged me, alhamdulillah. Because as Malcolm X lived his previous life as gangster and committing all kinds of sins or whatever, then seeing how beautifully, how greatly he changed himself, his life, into the life of someone like Saint, very straightforward person. And also seeing at the scenery of the Hajj when he made a pilgrimage to Makkah, which astonished himself. So many people gathered in many places for the purpose of watching soccer or dancing or the concerts, for the purpose of having fun. But people here, gathering here, so many people are gathering for the sake of worshipping one God. Is there any such place other than this place? I said, no. Then I finally understood. Becoming a Muslim does not mean that you have to be a timid person. No, becoming a Muslim is something very cool and beautiful and great. So, alhamdulillah.
Now, I haven't watched yet Malcolm X, the movie, because he mentioned that movie become a trigger point for the last push, which is interesting. Of course, I'm not sure how I will view the movie as Muslim, but based on what he mentioned, that is interesting. I'm interested to know, meaning the depiction in the movie and what is being portrayed, etc.
I took the final step and then embracing Islam. So the very night of that day, when I saw the film of Malcolm X, I consider myself that was the time I embraced Islam. I returned back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when I put my knees down and then put my forehead on the floor and pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
How was your family's and friends' reaction if you are becoming Muslim?
Well, they misunderstood. Although I told my parents my story of coming to Islam from A to Z, but they misunderstood me. Then that's why in the beginning there was no problem actually. But then when social issue happened in Japan appeared, obviously that was due to some fanatic cult called Omu, those who threw the killing poison inside the subway trains of Tokyo. Although it was nothing to do with Islam, they gave a very negative, bad image against having a faith whatsoever, having a particular religion whatsoever. So then there comes matter and issue of ignorance or not knowing about Islam. They thought Islam could be same, very similar to such fanatic people. When I was wanting to take permission from my father to go study abroad in Kuwait for the sake of learning Arabic language, I was already entering a university majoring Arabic language in Osaka. Then he said no. Then he started asking me why you are still Muslim. Quit being a Muslim. I told him, no, I can't. Dad, you know that ever since I became Muslim, did I become nuts? Did I become worse than before? He knows inside himself it's not. I mean, his son, didn't become any worse. Then finally he goes, okay, then you are not my son anymore. So that was very shocking statement. But since I was still, although I was having a part-time job and so on, but still somehow dependent to my parents, so I had to find some other way to go my life. Then next day I went to the masjid in Kobe, then consulted my problem with the Egyptian Imam. Then he gave me a recommendation letter to Egyptian embassy to get a scholarship in Azhar University. So I posted that letter to Egyptian embassy, then went back to my parents and then sat together with my parents with all calm atmosphere. Then alhamdulillah, I found my parents okay accepting me again. So alhamdulillah.
Did they, any of them?
Okay, interesting. And did he go to Al-Azhar? I'm assuming he did, considering he became the Imam, although Imam doesn't need necessarily, but
They embrace Islam after you still?
Unfortunately not. My father, who passed away, although his latter time before dying, he even told me that if I start living with you, I will be ready to embrace Islam or something, but my family circumstances didn't allow that. So
what was the thing that couldn't make sense to you in Buddhism? What couldn't you find in Buddhism?
one of those is reincarnation. Reincarnation is the thought started from India. And as you know, Buddhism was the successor of the Hinduism, or even the Buddha himself was considered to be revolutionist of the Hinduism. So the reincarnation is to see that you have the spirit, you have the soul, and this soul is never going to die and remains in this world through many kinds of shapes, depending on your works, depending on what you do. So the previous life, you might have been animal or insects or whatever, and then according to your deeds here, this life, you may be different creatures. You may be a human being, or you may be different creatures after this life. And likewise, unless you reach the nirvana, unless you reach the true understanding of this whole universe, and then get out of the reincarnation circle, you continue that way. That is how the thought of reincarnation sees. So the question goes, then the numbers of people different from time to time. So if you say that the soul is keep living, keep reborn, keep giving a rebirth to another, how can you match those? And what's more was the reason which stopped me from becoming a monk, which is to separate completely from the sacred and the normal life or daily life. Yeah, they completely separate, differentiate between the life of faith and daily lives. So there you find the contradictions.
If someone in Japan wants to search for Islam and write some questions about Islam in Google, what should he or she get in return?
Well, there are alhamdulillah many, so depending on how deep he or she is interested in knowing Islam. But very unfortunately, there is some books written by some Orientalists who wants to spread the hatred against Islam among Japanese people. Those books are like bestsellers of these days, something, unfortunately. So they may be the first medias that they would find, I guess.
What is the worst hardship that you go through in Japan about practicing your religion and living your life as a Muslim?
Currently?
Yeah,
now?
Generally.
Well, I would say lack of helping hands, because I have, alhamdulillah, 5 children, but we don't have, my family, consists, including myself, 7 people, the only Muslims amongst my families and relatives. So as the case of my wife. So we don't have families, hands-on families to take care of.
Community?
Yes, or even the community. I am living in the place called Gyotoku in Chiba, where comparatively many Muslims are living. But to my eyes, Muslims are gathering at times of prayers, but for their private lives, I don't see any links or
you don't find company
bonds,
in your daily life with the other Muslims so much. What was the best attribute of the Prophet ﷺ that impressed you the most?
His mercy, especially the time he was coming back from Ta'if.
Now, the point that he just mentioned just now, I think, yeah, realize it or not, the reality of being, you know, with individualism, right? Everyone is for their own selves. You know, even our neighbors become total strangers nowadays. And I'm not talking about other people, I'm even talking about my reality, right? And that is far different than what I experienced as a small kid with my parents and the neighbors, and you know, the close society. Yeah, I guess the real challenge that comes with, you know, the reality that makes people becoming more and more, you know, just individualistic, also affected vast majority of the Muslim, unfortunately.
Trying to call for people Ta'if that being thrown the stones and against act. Then when he was offered by the angel mountain to crush them, what he said, subhanallah, please don't. Perhaps there might be generations after them, those who would believe in one God. Subhanallah.
Why did you choose to become an imam?
Because no one is doing. There are, subhanallah, very few stays even as Muslims. There are many people who pronounce the shahada thing, but Allah knows, God knows how they become after it, after the shahada, because there is no system established for taking care of them afterwards, following up. There's no, and those, especially those who are coming from outside of Japan, those who are enthusiastic in dawah activities, they call people, and then when they find people giving shahada, they go after another targets without taking care of the new ones. Well, when I was still young enough after becoming Muslim, there are very limited graduates of the Islamic studies from my elders. But because I think that was one of the reasons why I felt distant from their activities. I was not living in Tokyo, so many of them in Tokyo, and very few activities of them reached people, person like me. So I questioned myself, although they've learned and they've given the opportunity to learn the deen of Allah to the heart of a youngster like myself that time, they're not doing good enough. They're not, but of course later on I understood that everyone has their own life and they're too busy for their daily lives. But that time they're not working good enough. I mean, they're not making their best efforts or whatever. So then if no one is going to do, I have to do it.
What do you think the reason is people attack Islam so violently, so ruthlessly? What is the reason, even in Japan?
Now what he just mentioned now is I think the core issue with the Muslim Ummah now is that most good practicing Muslim do not actually actively participate in helping out others, or spread the message, etc. Hence, being busy with life, with work, etc. is a reality. Not sure whether it would be a good excuse though after we die.
You see the results.
In my opinion, one of the reasons for that is because they understand that Islam is true. And because they understand straight away inside themselves, after recognizing Islam as truth, they know if they have to accept it. But if they accept it, it will be a burden on them. So they act with hatred and against it. Because without the teachings and the education of Islam, our nafs becomes very fat and huge and powerful against us.
Is there anything you want to add?
Oh, please. If you were among our brothers and sisters, please don't forget to pray for me and for my family, and especially for my mother's Islam, and also the mother of my wife and my brother in kinship, and all similar circumstance people like our parents. Many of the parents of people like me, Revert or converts, are still not Muslims. So please pray for us. Thank you. Jazakumullah khair.
Yeah. Yep. Not sure what I want to add. Although that situation there, I do think that we should, especially born Muslim like me, meaning that Muslim that was born into Muslim families, we do not appreciate enough the struggle that is being faced by our brothers and sisters that have family members that they love, but still do not accept Islam, right? And where are we to help them? That's it for today. Thank you for watching. See you next time.